Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Kevin Kelly. I'm the Director for Community Economic Development here at the Community Action Partnership. Welcome to today's webinar, which is on an innovative project by the Community Action Program in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Capital Construction is a job training program for formerly incarcerated individuals that trains them in construction skills, which they use to renovate homes there in Lancaster and surrounding area. I'll now turn the presentation over to Dan German, who's the CEO. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you, Kevin. Good afternoon, everybody. As Kevin said, my name is Dan Jorman. I'm the CEO of Community Action Partnership of Lancaster County. It's a pleasure to be with you here today, broadcasting from sunny Lancaster, PA, where our high today is 92 degrees, and we thought we were getting fall early a week or so ago. We should have known better. I am going to be talking to you today about almost a 3-year journey in capital construction. This was a concept that we had almost 4 years ago, and so it's always amazing how long it takes to get things where you want them to be, and to get ideas from the brainstorming session to actually being something that's active in reality and making an impact in your community. It always feels like it should be faster than that. So I'm going to take you through the concept a little bit, and please feel free to ask questions as we go along, and I certainly will try to make sure I address all questions at the end, including any that I may have missed during the presentation. So often when we're doing our work in our communities, everything is siloed, which here in Lancaster County is a part of the regular landscape in a positive way, but in a negative way, what that usually means for us in social services is that everything is separate and is seen as being the separate domain of separate organizations. We'll spend some money on social work, something that we do here at RCAP, and even doing great social work. We have a program called Navigation where we holistically work with people and stay with them for the long haul as they work towards self-sufficiency. But even when you do that, if you do it in a silo, it's not as effective. And then, the money we spend on workforce development, I don't know what it's like where you are, but so often our workforce development system is focused on those high priority jobs more so than the people that are seeking the jobs. And so people sometimes get pushed towards careers that we want to see filled, but it's not necessarily with an eye toward their development as people. We spend money on affordable housing. Lancaster County has one of the tightest markets in the country. We have in our county, we have a less than 1% vacancy rate, which has caused our rental rates to spike, families doubling and tripling up to try and make it work, often in housing that's very substandard. People with means tend to be gobbling up some of the better properties that are rentals that used to be affordable rentals for folks, and that's leaving some of the worst properties for the families that we serve at Community Action Partnership. And then blighted housing. Lancaster is an old city. One of our biggest problems is our blighted housing stock, especially around lead paint. We have 3.9 times the lead poisoning rate of Flint, Michigan, but it's not from our water, it's from our paint. Which should be a solvable problem. So often though, the resources that we get to work on lead remediation are about encapsulation, and the problem keeps coming back over and over again and doing damage to the families and the children that live in those homes. And then all the other things that we see with blighted properties, infestation and mold, and all these things that lead to all sorts of horrible health disparities for the families that we serve. And so, we were looking for a way that we could see if we could combine as many of these silos as we could in one activity. And the model that we wanted to look at looks a little more like this. What if we looked at the place where all these things overlap? And for us, that turned out to be a project that we called Capital Workforce. How do we bring it all together and make sure that for every dollar that's spent, we're able to make an impact in all of these different areas, which we were hoping would make us more attractive to funders that were out there. So I'll start in telling the story of how this all got started by describing a little bit about our Community Action Agency, just so you understand scale and where we were starting from. When I came in the doors about 4 years ago, we were pretty much by the book provider of government programs. 99%, or if not more, of our funding was coming from state and federal government programs. We're a pretty large cap for Pennsylvania. We have now we have a staff of about 330 people. Our budget is about $35 million a year. We did have one social enterprise already active that had been active for about 20 years, and that's our special formula warehouse, which was a creative idea that we launched in partnership with Pennsylvania WIC to be able to distribute single cans of formula that were prescription formula to WIC recipients across 7 states. So that social enterprise had grown, but there really hadn't been anything else new launched in almost 20 years after that had launched and has been successful for us. We are a Head Start provider, WIC provider, domestic violence services, child care information services, our state subsidy program for child care for adults who are working or going to school. A lot of standard government programs. My predecessor had started to push us outside of the box with the National Circles program and really trying to dig in with families around self-sufficiency. We ended up replacing that in my first year with a navigation program that was very, very person-centered and that would allow us to dig in with whole households around all the barriers that they had. So it's in that environment where we were trying to brainstorm as a team about what do our customers need and what are we seeing for our customers? What does our community need? And in thinking about something that could be sustainable, what do businesses need in our area? I was very much aware of the success that the Democracy Collaborative had in Cleveland with their model of finding anchor companies that would be willing to work with a social enterprise and become its sort of backbone funding source so that it could stay sustainable and work on workforce development and job training and paying people a living wage. And as we did those brainstorming sessions, we actually came up with several ideas. Only a couple of them have launched so far. And capital construction was one of those ideas that ended up on the whiteboard that day. This idea of what if we hired people who were hard to place? As Kevin said at the beginning, folks with criminal records are at the top of our list, but we are also open to other barriers that people might have, whether that's something as complicated as not knowing the English language and being new to the country, or something that we see a little more commonly, which is just not having the skills, both the hard skills and soft skills. In Lancaster County, we have the challenge as a community of having over 7,000 open jobs in our community. Now, some of those aren't living wage jobs, but a lot of them are. And the more that those employers are having trouble finding people to fill those jobs, the more it seems that they're willing to work with fewer and fewer hard skills and are much more interested in the soft skills, things like showing up to work on time and having a good work ethic and not being disruptive in the team that you're on. And so we knew from what we were seeing from our Chamber of Commerce and from others that our construction industry especially was having a very hard time filling jobs. We were hearing stories of construction companies that were paying skilled laborers to clean up job sites at the end of the day because they didn't have any unskilled laborers. And they don't have enough skilled laborers either. So, they're turning down work. They're worried about whether or not they can stay in the community, these sorts of issues. So we started reaching out to some of those construction companies, looking for some of those folks who might be great places to build pipelines to. We also started talking to some of the folks in our community who were already doing some of the blighted housing rehab and construction. We didn't want to become competition for somebody who could potentially be a partner. We didn't want to step on anybody's toes. And what we found was that for the most part, what was happening with blighted housing rehab was we had a couple of groups that work with volunteers, which do fantastic work, but it takes a really long time for them to finish a single property because of just working around volunteer schedules. And so, in some cases, 2 years to finish a single property. And then in other cases, we found that out of town contractors were being hired and were coming in, and they would turn the properties around faster, but they would do it at a lower quality level. And so the quality was sometimes what they thought a family living below the poverty line would either accept, or maybe in the worst cases, what they deserved. And so we'd see some shoddy workmanship, and we were talking to some potential partners who were very unhappy with what they were getting. The other challenge there is that when that money was spent on those contractors, the money for the rehab was leaving the community. So the people being paid were living in other communities. That money was circulating in those economic ecosystems. And we already knew that we were losing a lot of money, especially in the more impoverished parts of our city and our county, where money was leaving for out-of-town landlords and things like that. I mean, Lancaster City sends about $19 million a year out of town to landlords who don't live here. So we were looking for, with capital construction, a solution that would help keep some of that money circulating within the community itself as well. So the way that we set this up in the very beginning was starting small. I'm a big fan of when you're piloting something, you want to do a very small pilot. You want to take your time. As I said, we've been at this for almost 3 years now. Take your time and keep it small while you're figuring out all the things about it that don't work. And so all the things that keep you up at night. You're already taking risks when you're doing innovation, so you don't want to risk your whole shirt on ideas like this. You want to start small, and so that's exactly what we did. We started with a single crew. We hired a foreman. We were very careful to vet folks who not only were good at construction, but also finding folks who had some kind of background in either coaching or teaching. And so we started with one foreman, and then initially hired 3 laborers to join the crew. And with the foreman, we weren't looking necessarily for someone who had a criminal record, although we were open to that. With the crew, we started out with one person who had been in the state's prison system for 7 years, and ended up finding 2 other people who didn't have criminal records, but had barriers like no driver's license, no experience, no soft skills, and who were struggling being unemployed. The gentleman we worked with, who had 7 years in prison, his challenge was he was working for a temp agency, and he would be on a job for about a week before they would check get his background information in, and then he'd be let go again and start over again. So he'd worked in a ridiculous number of places in the 2 months leading up to him getting a job with us. We started with a property that a partner had. It was actually a property that they had fired another contractor from. They had a private contractor coming in, and the quality level just wasn't there. This had been a condemned property that they'd gotten from the city for $1. I'm going to show you the after pictures of that a little bit later in the presentation. Generally speaking, our goal for this was to get some capital up front, some seed funding. So we did some grant applications. We got a small grant from our local power company that gave us some seed funding to get started. And then we had a job waiting for us with another partner who, as I said, was unhappy with the work that they'd gotten from another private contractor. And in theory, the way this was supposed to work was that once we got started, we'd be able to sustain the crews and the employees that we had with getting paid from the work that we would. So we have no shortage of blighted housing in Lancaster City, and we have several other boroughs and townships in Lancaster County that have the same problem. And so our goal was to first and foremost show that we could create quality. As we walked through the first property and looked at its condition, one of the things that I said to our first crew was this should be a place that I would want to move into with my wife and my children. And if it isn't, then we haven't done the job correctly. And so setting our standards, being able to prove a concept that we could meet those standards, that we could also provide a meaningful training experience for people. We weren't interested in rushing the training experience. Even today, we're still not. We pride ourselves on being very person-centered. And so often our training programs are, a few weeks maybe a couple of months, and then we push people out, whether they're ready or not. And then, and then we see them fail out in the marketplace, which doesn't do any of us any good and wasted our initial investment. So we weren't interested in rushing with the first 3 men that we hired. We really wanted to prove that they could be good employees, that they could learn the skills that they needed, both hard skills and soft skills, and that we could just do the simple task of the job before we ramp this up into a more involved workforce training vehicle. So again, as I look through what we did in the beginning and some of the things that we see as steps along the way, hiring the right general contractor or foreman who's also a coach is crucial. Hiring a crew from the community with barriers to employment. I was struck after a community meeting prior to us launching Capital Construction by a gentleman, older African-American gentleman, who during a community meeting said, all the children of color who live in this neighborhood, every time they see someone coming in to fix something in this neighborhood, it's never someone who looks like them. So we wanted not only someone who looked like the people that lived in the neighborhoods where we were doing rehab, but maybe even their neighbor, maybe even someone whose story that they know this person has made some mistakes, and they get to see that person turning it around and being the hero of the story and revitalizing and beautifying their community. Creating a paid apprenticeship position. This is something that we have just now launched into. I'll describe that in a little bit and how that's going to work, but we learned a lot along the way with that first crew, just about working in blighted housing rehab and what that means in terms of opportunities for learning. When you're working on condemned properties, everything's a surprise. Every day is a new day of surprises as you open new walls or find, squirrels that have been living there for years, whatever it is that you find when you go into these properties. And it gets a little bit hard for folks who are unskilled to do the same things often enough with enough repetition to train up quickly. And so we've addressed that, and I'll explain that in a little bit. Work with various organizations that do rehab. That's something that we've taken very seriously. We have a lot of collaboration here that I'll describe in a minute. We did find it important, especially given the challenges of our community, to get certified in lead remediation. And actually, one of the properties that we rehabbed this past year was a special project in partnership with our lead coalition. And we took a house that was owned by a church that actually had lead paint in it. We remediated the property and turned it into essentially a bed and breakfast for people whose properties are being abated. So other folks who are living in properties that need the lead abated can go stay in this property while their house is getting cleaned out of lead, and then they can move back home. A lot of our work has been essentially as house flippers for good. Somebody actually used the criticism that we were a flipper early on in arguing with us while we were trying to rehab a historically protected house that was literally falling into the street while we were trying to rehab it. And so knowing your zoning and your historic districts is important while you're doing this work too. But accused us of being a flipper, and my response was, yeah, we're a flipper for good. We're flipping houses for first-time low to moderate income home buyers with a 15-year deed restriction that keeps it in the hands of low to moderate income first-time home buyers for at least that long. And it's funny, on the opposite end of the spectrum, one of the properties that we finished last year was so popular on the market that we were getting all sorts of offers from people who were not low to moderate income, and a couple of them accused us of reverse discrimination because we weren't going to sell to someone who wasn't low to moderate income, which also says something about the quality of our finished product. Redeveloping properties so that they can be quality, affordable rentals. We've been working with a CDC that we're partnered with. They're doing scattered site rental, so that it's something that fewer and fewer organizations have been doing in our community over the years. And so our CDC is focused on trying to retain that so that we can strategically put pressure on slumlords and try and get some higher quality rentals in some strategic places where we're partnered with other redevelopment organizations. And working with them, we are able to get the quality up in these rentals and then they offer them actually at lower rates than they have to. For us, we have to be at a percentage of our county's median household income, but our city's median household income is much lower than our county's. And so this partner sets these rents at a percentage of the city's median household income, which makes them even more affordable. And of course, when we get done with them, the quality is higher. We want to redevelop blighted neighborhoods. And so in doing this work, we're partnered with other organizations, and sometimes these organizations who are doing community organizing or other redevelopment work are helping us target which properties we're going to go after to rehab because of their strategic value. So for instance, the one property that was falling into the street was affecting the psychology of an entire neighborhood. The folks that lived on the block who were trying to launch this community organizing redevelopment effort were sort of dragged down by the fact that this property was there. And so it was one of the first properties that we tackled because of its strategic value, not just for the sake of rehabbing it. We want to build and keep wealth in neighborhoods. So again, by hiring people that live in these neighborhoods, our goal is that they'll now have income that they'll spend in that same neighborhood where they're rehabbing housing. We want to create an atmosphere for small business. We're even working towards trying to create opportunities for residents in these neighborhoods to potentially buy some of these other properties and become landlords who are incredibly present and very local, so that more of those rents in our city stay in the south side of our city and aren't flowing out to other communities, sometimes other states. And again, we want to source employees into the workforce. We have just sourced 3 employees into the workforce to different providers, one into his own business. We were working with a local organization that supports small business training. Each of these employees that come to us set their own goals. One joined the military and then came back to us and is looking to work for a construction firm. And so we not only try to match them with construction companies, but also to be very mindful about where their skills are and where their skills aren't. And so we don't just have traditional construction firms working with us at this point. We also have, for instance, a painting company that's very open to hiring people with criminal records. They've partnered with us, a carpet company that does carpet cleaning and rug delivery, and they're also very open to working with us. And so we've been very patient in kind of setting up a large enough pipeline that we can, now that we're adding our paid training positions in, we can start to source people out on a regular basis to places that match where their strengths are. And finally, creating that narrative of hope. How do we help people in the community see that they're not only can their community be revitalized, but that they can be a part of it. That people that they know, people from their own community, are a part of that revitalization. It's not something that's being done to them. And so often gentrification is the tag that we get whenever we try to do redevelopment work within a community. For people to see that we're doing this work with them, that they're a part of this, and that there's an opportunity for community residents to be intimately involved with this work. So one of the fringe benefits from capital construction for us has just been how much press we've gotten. I have not put all the stories here. I've just put a couple just to give you an idea, but there's probably been over a dozen television and newspaper and magazine articles written about capital locally and regionally since we got started. Here's one from Fox 43, one of our local Fox stations. And it's just been incredible coverage. It helps us in lots of different ways. Our community has a give day or an extra give. I don't know how many of your communities have those, but what we found is that as we've gotten more and more press for some of our more innovative programs, our more collaborative programs, we've seen some pretty high profile donors that we didn't know, who clearly knew us and started giving to us during the community give day, which has allowed us to start relationships with those donors and follow up so that we can ask them why they gave to us in the first place and continue that relationship and make sure that they're receiving our newsletter and getting a direct communication from us in the future. Our newspaper has followed not just our capital construction project, but has done profiles on some of our crew members and also on some of our home buyers. and has followed up with them as well to tell their stories. So it's been really exciting to see not just our community action agency, but the people that we serve getting the spotlight in our community and in a positive way. So the results, what does this look like? What's the quality of work when you're taking a chance on people? Again, the foreman is crucial. So getting somebody who has the skills and the work ethic and the integrity to bring the project across the line is very, very key. But this is the brick house in the middle. It was our very first project. This was, as I said, condemned. Lancaster Housing Opportunity Partnership, which is one of our community partners, picked this house up for $1. It had some structural issues, which they had hired initially a private contractor to come in and rehab it. They took care of the structural issues, but as soon as they started on the more cosmetic things of the house, LHOP, or Lancaster Housing Opportunity Partnership, was no longer happy with the quality level that they were seeing. And so let them go, and this ended up being our first chance to show what we could do. And so we will show you that now. This is the staged house when we were done. This house was for sale for a first-time low to moderate income home buyer. As I said at the beginning, the bar that I set for my team was I should want to move in there with my wife and my children, and I did want to move in there. It was a beautiful job. This house sold in about 3 days for $79,000 and made a slight profit for LHOP, who was the owner of the property, and we got paid to do the work that was done there. And you can see a few different angles here of the beautiful work that was done. LHOP has a longstanding partnership with a couple of local real estate agents who work with them on these projects, including a house stager who does beautiful work staging the homes for us, all pro bono. The real estate agent donates part of their commission for the sale back to the nonprofits that are part of the rehabilitation. And the settlement company that we work with, and we do settlement with these families, also does their work for us pro bono. So this has been such a wonderful community effort, and everyone's been so excited about being able to hand the keys to a place that looks like this over to a first-time home buyer. And again, with our rental market in Lancaster being as tight as it is, we're finding, especially for properties at this $80,000, $90,000, even $100,000 price point, that even with city taxes, we're cutting some people's monthly expenses in half. So in other words, their rental was costing twice what it's costing them for a mortgage and taxes on owning their own home. And so we've also seen a spike in the number of people who have taken Lancaster Housing Opportunity Partnership's first-time homebuyer classes, which we're really excited that those folks finish those classes and get something that looks like this. So again, this is all the work of our very first crew on the very first job, and skill levels have just gone up from here. A couple more pictures here. Here's one of our foremen and one of our crew members. A lot of times when we're looking at what skills we need to get people past, sometimes they're very simple. Some of the companies that are desperate for employees right now in our community are telling us if we can just get them to a level where they can read a ruler, add and subtract fractions, and interpret a simple blueprint. Where does the door go? How much does this measurement say on the blueprint? That's all they need for us to move somebody along. And so as we've kind of established ourselves at being able to do properties, and we've done about a dozen properties now in the past 3 years, and it's been about half and half of how many of them were for rentals and how many of those were for first-time home buyers. Here, I think it's important as we talk about this, we have been ambitious in marketing and branding. You can see this is a property we're working on, and there's a banner out front. When I think about collaboration, the things in my mind that kill collaboration are money, credit, and power. If those things aren't balanced well, then somebody always feels like they're getting cheated and wants to break up the collaboration. And so for us, it's very important that when we do these properties, we put banners and signs up so that all the partners who are involved in that project can be recognized for their contribution, including our city. Our city in the past has often been a contributor to things that happened in the south side of the city, but a lot of organizations would not even mention them at ribbon cuttings and other things. So we want to make sure we give our city some love and all of our other partners who help us make these projects possible. And so even if the banner has to be big so all the logos can fit, we think it's really important to give everybody credit. We also think it's important for neighbors when they see a property being worked on, especially with the sensitivity to gentrification, that neighbors don't think, oh, here's one more house flipper, or here's somebody else who's trying to gentrify the neighborhood. We want them to know this project is being done as a part of a community effort and by multiple organizations. And sometimes the logos on the banners are not just our nonprofits. As I said, sometimes they're local government. Sometimes they're for-profits who decide to help us out on something. And so it's been really exciting to show people just how many organizations are coming together to make change in our city. Again, we make sure that our logo gets on all of our trucks. This is out of our governor. We actually got him to hawk our merchandise or show our logo, but he came out to see one of the properties that our second crew was finishing. It was their first project this past year in Columbia, Pennsylvania. Columbia, Pennsylvania does not have quite the concentration of poverty that Lancaster City does, but it's got the second highest concentration of poverty in the county, and it actually has more blighted housing and more of a problem with lead paint than the city does. And so we were really excited to get out there. Being able to start a second crew out in Columbia was really thanks to the Columbia Borough, our county's redevelopment authority, and the land bank that they started, and our community foundation. And I'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. So again, really pleased that Governor Wolf could come out and see our work and understand the multiple impacts that our program was able to have. Here's some of our proud crew members posing in a property. These properties, again, we're talking about mostly condemned properties at this point, which are challenging. They're really hard because you keep finding new things that are wrong. I think of the old movie with Tom Hanks. I'm showing my age here, but The Money Pit. So you keep finding things that are wrong, and you've got to get them back to where they need to be for folks. This one also sold to a first-time low to moderate income home buyer. This one was more, I believe, in the $130,000 range when it sold. Again, just a lot of work doing facades now. So we're doing a lot of window and door replacement. And I'll talk about that program in just a moment as well. We also, you'll see the one gentleman in the red shirt there has the volunteer moniker across his shirt. It's also been a great opportunity for us to partner with some different businesses that do volunteer days, days of caring, and getting their volunteer crews to come out and do demo with us at the beginning of a project, or come out and put a beautiful flower garden in a yard of a property at the end of a project. It's just a little added touch to the property in some cases that we might not have been able or wouldn't have done without the volunteers coming out. And it gives us a chance to network and connect to more potential partners, more potential funders throughout the community. And they're just another finished product. So again, our labor shortage in Lancaster County has gotten to the point where I would say now we have well over a dozen different construction-related companies that we've been talking to for these last 2.5 years to go through everything from what are they looking for, what are the skill sets. We've done a job fair with one of them, and also how do we create a reciprocal relationship. And so once we got to the point which we've just reached now, where we're ready to put regular workforce training into a normal cycle, now the question is, where are we sourcing people from? And there's lots of different places that we're looking to get the people that come to us for training, whether that's reentry, working with our county prison, working with our local high school for students who have shown an interest in this field, but aren't quite ready or able to go to one of our technical colleges or into an internship program right away. Maybe there's some life barriers there, or some things going on with them or their family, or again, something in their past that's keeping them from moving on to that. We've also, with these dozen or so construction companies, had this thought of, well, how about all the people who come into you who you say, no, you're not quite ready for us, and you refer them back to us instead of just telling them to take a walk. And so we've now created special referral cards that we've given out to these for-profit construction companies and different kinds of construction firms, so that when they interview somebody and get an application and go, wow, you know, you just don't quite have the minimum skills that we need here. What they're saying is, we're sending you now to Capital Construction. You can join their on-the-job training program, and then come back to us when you're done. When they tell you that you're ready, they'll send you back. So money, right? It's always the big question for anytime we have a great idea is, how the heck are we going to pay for it? Which is usually what all the well-grounded people that I hire and keep around me ask me like every other day when I have a new idea. And so how are we going to pay for it? You know, there's a lot that you have to spend on this. You're going to have a contractor. You're going to pay anywhere from 45, honestly, up to 55 as we've expanded crews. And we have the same challenge that the construction companies have, is they're having a hard time finding skilled people, and we're trying to find them at the same time, not at the same scale, but we're still trying to find them. What we can add to that mix that maybe some of these construction companies don't have is, you know, our 403B plan and paid holidays and vacation days and our dental and eye plan and our health benefits, you know, some other things that we have in our social service world that make it a sweet deal for somebody who maybe has been running their own home rehab company solo for a while, or working for a bigger construction firm and just feels like they're, you know, a number, and that their work doesn't really have an impact on their community. So we'll play that. Don't you want to have a deeper impact on your community angle too with folks? So whatever it takes to try and get a skilled person to come join our crew as a foreman versus going to one of those other firms. I hate to compete with them in that way, but we need to. And then for our crew members, we want to pay enough that we're above our living wage calculator for Lancaster County, but not so much that they want to stay with us forever, because the whole goal is for them to build a life plan with us while they're with us, for them to work with our navigation team to kind of create that plan and map it out, and for them to then tell us where they do want to go. What does it look like for them in the future, so that we can connect them with those opportunities. And like I said, with our first 3 guys, we took our time and really developed them and what they wanted for themselves, and they stuck with us. We still had the same 3 guys right up until a couple of months ago, working as the core crew in Lancaster City, with no disciplinary issues, not a lot of missed time at work that wasn't excused. You know, they built up a great resume over that time. And then our paid training slots are $10 an hour. And again, we want to be person-centered. So we want to pay you for the training, so you're not trying to figure out how you're going to live while you get this training. And we also don't want to say, well, it's a 3-week or it's a 6-week. It's however many weeks it takes training for us to get to the point where we feel confident that when we send you out to that employer who's waiting for you, you're ready for them. They're getting what they want to see in terms of your minimum skills, both hard and soft skills, and that it's going to be a successful fit. We needed to have a truck. We now have 3 trucks. But at the beginning, we were like, okay, we're going to need to find a truck somewhere. We need tools, storage space. We just happened to, when we ran out of storage space, and we were paying for all this extra storage space, and we actually had a storage container in our parking lot for a while. We actually saw a construction company for sale in one of the worst parts of town, which is usually where we do our rehab. And it was only $156,000. So I talked my board into getting a mortgage, because I said it's going to be about $4 a square foot for this place, which is going to cost us less than all the storage spaces we're taking up now. So now we actually have a Capital Construction headquarters right in the neighborhood where we do most of our rehab, and that's been fantastic for us. We're talking with some neighbors about the possibility of starting a tool library, so that homeowners can borrow tools from a tool library and work on the homes that they purchased. Now, we got $20,000 in reimbursement for rehabbing that first property that I showed you. We also got a $25,000 grant from our local power company. What followed from that was another rehab almost right away from LHOP, so we jumped right into that one. We did 5 rehabs that would in the first 2 years that were going to be for affordable rental with the CDC that I spoke about. We actually pitched our lead remediation plan to the U.S. Conference of Mayors Community Wins Challenge back in 2000 and, oh boy, I want to say 16, and it might have been 17. And we won first prize in the small city category. We won $150,000 to launch our lead initiatives. We got a $32,000 roughly grant from Columbia Borough to start a crew just in Columbia. And then we got a match for that from our community foundation. And so that was some of where our early seed dollars came from. Sustainability depends on access to the work. And so again, we rehab for first-time home buyers. When they purchase those properties, the money comes back. I'm going to be honest with you, sometimes we lose some money on some of these, or if not us, the owner, whether that's LHOP or the land bank. But for some of these properties, that's strategic. You know, when we're looking at something that's been condemned and is not fit for human habitation anymore, and we're trying to bring it back strategically, the partners are all aware that we're going to get most of our money back on those kinds of properties, but maybe not all of it, and we make the decision that it's worth the dollars we're going to lose on the project to get it done for what it means for the rest of the community. Home rehabilitation programs, lead remediation programs, facade improvement, which is something new I'm going to talk about in just a minute, and some small business rehab has come our way as well. Some facade and small business rehabilitation on some properties that had been emptied for a while. We just did one that was going to be a corner grocery store that's also part of our, going to be part of our hospital's fresh foods initiative. So again, keeping work in the pipeline is key. We want to be able to move around. We do use subcontractors from time to time for things that are, you know, above our skill set for training. So electrical or plumbing are big ones for us. Every now and again, we'll need to do some historically accurate brickwork for Lancaster County. Again, we're a very old city, and so that comes up a lot. We're able to bid on work when necessary. Within our land bank for the county, properties become available, and so we get into that bidding process. We are one of only 3 contractors who are certified to do lead abatement work in the city and county. And so we bid on those properties when it makes sense. And key to us is having capital up front so that we can purchase. And that's something that we're working on now. Lancaster Housing Opportunity Partnership is also a CDFI. And so we've been talking to them about, instead of partnering with them on these projects, about them creating a rotating line of credit for us at a very low interest rate so that we can purchase, rehab, resell, keeping the same other partnerships in place for the end product, but to allow us to then keep the net proceeds so that we can start to invest more in the project. We've been breaking even overall, but being able to start to make some money would certainly make my board happy. Finally, MOUs. We have MOUs with a whole bunch of organizations and entities right now. We have one with Lancaster Housing Opportunity Partnership, with our County Redevelopment Authority and the Land Bank. I literally just signed one yesterday with our city's land bank and their redevelopment authority, and that one is really exciting to me. Our mayor has, we've built a really strong relationship with our mayor. She's been in office for about 2 years now, and she wants to fast track blighted properties and tax lien properties into the hands of about a half dozen nonprofits that do this kind of rehabilitation work. And so as a property becomes available, we're going to, instead of bidding against slumlords and just the general public for these properties, they're going to be fast tracked to nonprofits. We'll have meetings together and decide which one of us has capacity to take this one on for the neighborhood, instead of sitting and watching this property on their block deteriorate slowly with condemnation stickers in the windows for years or months. They're going to immediately see a nonprofit's logo, or several logos in our case, go up in the window, so they know that something is going to be happening soon that's positive for that property and for their neighborhood. We value the partnerships we've been able to build with other nonprofits and with our city. So what's next? Big one for us coming up is facades. And it's a big one for us because it's what we were waiting for to really launch this training pipeline, where we wanted to more frequently source people out, these construction companies. And so the facades allow us to do a couple of things. They allow us to do the same kind of work over and over again so that we can get repetition for these trainees. And being able to, you know, measure spaces for windows, put these new windows in, doors, the same things over and over again, so that we can start checking things off the list that we know the contractors are asking for. We're very excited about that. That's actually, we applied jointly with the Lancaster City Alliance. That's what that LCA at the bottom there stands for. Sorry about the abbreviations for folks that aren't from Lancaster. And LCA got about $400,000 in grant funding along with us to be able to do this. And again, as you're working with partners, LCA had the facade improvement experience. We had this way to do it that also contributed to workforce development. And so that attracted new funders for both of us to be able to work together to do this. And so we're the principal contractor. Some of that work can be done by other contractors. And as I said, for some complex things, we'll subcontract. But it's been really exciting to know that we've got, again, stable customers with money to spend that allow us to keep our folks paid. Because for us, while we love to see the finished product, we love to see the beautiful homes and the happy homeowners, we're about trying to get this into a workforce training opportunity that's sustainable and frankly can be self-sustaining at some point. So this whole job shadowing and training piece has launched. We have our first trainees who are in the pipeline now and are looking at rolling off about 8 to 10 a year into different contracting positions with the partners that we've been building as we put this all together. So that was a lot. I'm looking down now to see what's in the question box, and I'm happy to take any of your questions.
Yeah, I don't see any, let me just ask you, I guess, a couple questions to get things started, and you have tips on this some, but I wanted to specifically ask you, did you run into any obstacles or anything that were really not expected in this process, and what might have been ahead of you? How did you go with that?
Yeah, so yeah, there's tons of obstacles. That's the challenge with trying new things, is that you run into all kinds of things that you didn't even know that to look out for. So we certainly have had our challenges with historic districts in our community. To be very honest, we have a historical board. Some of these historic districts, which were started by citizens, in their defense, they were started by residents. But they were started by residents in the 1970s. So back when I was in elementary school, the people that used to live in these neighborhoods thought it was really important to protect their historical character. What that's led to is people don't go to the historic board when they're changing their windows. They put in any old window. It does lead, they avoid it, and it leads to some really bad rehabilitation going on from time to time. When we followed the rules, we were given the most expensive option of what to do in every case, and not that we want to skimp, but in some cases, for instance, wood windows, and demanding that they had to be pure wood windows that weren't vinyl or aluminum wrapped. Our argument was, for our homeowners, maintenance, having to scrape these windows and paint them at some time in the future is not necessarily something a low to moderate income home buyer is going to have the resources to do in a few years. And so we wanted the materials that were going to be more durable, but that would still look the same, that would still keep the historic value. And so that's been an ongoing fight. I found myself in more of those meetings than I ever cared to be in. And to be blunt, those panels are amazingly older and white and have more means. And so it can sometimes be, I feel like I'm banging my head against the same brick walls that we're rehabbing. Another obstacle is retraining your board. As I said, we were a traditional community action agency in the sense that when I came in the door, almost everything we did was a government program with a specific fiscal year start and a specific fiscal year end. And so the money comes in, it's dollar in, dollar out. It's all supposed to be matched up and even by the end of the year. They were not ready, and nor did I think of in the beginning, to make them ready for this idea of a business that never has a fiscal year end date, and where the money doesn't come in cleanly or evenly within one fiscal year, and it doesn't go out cleanly or evenly within one fiscal year. So one fiscal year, it looked like we were fantastic. Another fiscal year, our board members thought we were on fire and we're bleeding money. helping them see the trend of where the money's coming in and coming out, looking more at a 3-year picture instead of a fiscal year, and also helping them understand, yeah, that's short this fiscal year, but please keep in mind we got the seed money grant for that last fiscal year and had to book it then. And so it's been a lot of explaining about those sorts of things. You know, you have some expenses while you're doing some work, and sometimes you might get paid for it in a completely different fiscal year. So those are some of the big headaches. Staffing wise, I think the other lesson learned is you need somebody who is a great estimator. Our first foreman was a great guy, did great work, but he was not a great estimator. And so we've learned the hard way to be really realistic and to build contingencies in, especially working with blighted properties and condemned properties. How can we be as realistic and conservative as possible in putting our bids together? And so it's not the world of contracting where you're trying to promise the homeowner everything in the world for the lowest price possible, and then you just surprise them with change orders later. We really need to know what we're looking at up front, and we're in a position now where our lead foreman is really, really good at estimating. That's been a great benefit.
Yeah, I see some questions here. This one from Abby. Sark, this is very interesting. Thank you for the presentation. Are there any certifications that you've tried to tie into your training program?
Actually, we haven't. I'm assuming, Abby, that you're talking about for the people that we're training. We have to an extent. So they all go through lead certification, lead remediation certificate training, and so we get lead certified for everybody. But other certifications, what we found, especially as we've dug into to the workforce development world a little bit more and the construction world and working with our local association of builders and contractors, is there are a bunch of apprenticeships that are out there if you can get past the minimum requirements. And so we've kind of seen ourselves as filling a gap in the system where we're working more on the soft skills and some of those things. Now, as soon as those places tell us that there's more that our folks need for them to get hired at $14, $15 an hour, we'll look at adding those things in. But right now, what we found is we really just need to get them used to the type of work. It's physical work. So, you have to have the right work ethic if you're going to get a good job doing this. You should understand what you're in for if you're going to do this. And so, so we really have found that it's more about the people development and creating kind of the pattern and the habit of getting up and going to work every day on a crew like this, and then learning those minimum skills that there really aren't certification programs for. I mean, the crazy thing is, we were talking about it, and one of our foremen said, how are we going to teach these guys how to add and subtract fractions? Like, I do it, but I don't know, that I can teach it. And I said, well, it's really kind of an elementary school skill. How many teachers do we have in our Head Start program? Can we find somebody who's done this? We need to kind of backfill for something that didn't happen in normal public education for a lot of this stuff. So that's kind of where we've gone and seen ourselves as sort of that missing piece where people just kept falling through that gap, and now we've shored it up.
A couple of comments. This is so gorgeous. Love this idea. Can't wait to take this information back to my CEO. And here's a question. We're a nonprofit community action agency. Do you see this model being something we could apply within our type of organization?
Was that a nonprofit?
Yes.
We actually are also a nonprofit community action agency. So we are, I said most of our programs were government programs, but we're a 501c3. We were just acting more like we were just government. And most of our community actually thought that we were a branch of our government or a government agency when I first started 4 years ago. But we're a private 501c3. And a big piece of this was working to build a culture in our organization, both for staff, because a lot of our staff, I would have conversations in that first year with my staff about things like, hey, our customers need us to do this. And middle managers would say to me, well, our funders won't let us do that. And my response was, your funders don't run this organization. I do. Let's talk about what our customer needs, and we'll go find other money for it if we need to, or we'll build something that needs to exist if we can't get it through the government funding that we're receiving for very specific programs. But also for our board, we had some for-profit folks on our board who were used to taking risks and being entrepreneurial at work, but as board members, we're more used to being conservative. And we've gotten to a place where we've built a culture where both the board and our internal staff understand that the real risk is to stick with the status quo. Circle the wagons and let our government funding slowly dry up and, die the death of 1,000 cuts, versus being a risk taker, being entrepreneurial, and trying to figure out how to create income streams that are unrestricted and that also have the impacts that we want to see. And so when we're the ones creating the programming and building the funding model, we get to decide what the outcomes need to look like, not somebody else sitting, in a state house or in Washington, D.C. And so that kind of freedom is what we're trying to build towards. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it and tell you that that's easy. And obviously here we are, 3 years out, and I'm just grateful that we haven't lost a bunch of money, that we've basically broken even after 3 years of this. I can see a day where we'll start to turn a profit in the near future. And honestly, that's what a lot of times what happens with for-profit businesses is, it takes a few years to get to the place where you start to turn a profit. In the nonprofit world, we don't tend to have a lot of patience for that. And our boards get a little scared once we start talking about risking capital. And that's also why it can take us a long time, because frankly, to kind of tamp down that fear, we do a lot of grant writing, and we look for some venture philanthropists who are looking to change the paradigm as well and get excited when we put these kind of crazy ideas in front of them. It becomes the kind of thing that they want to invest in, even if it means they lose their money. And, and that's for us, it's our community foundation is one of those venture philanthropists. And thankfully, believe it or not, our utility company, our electric company, was the first investor, knowing that this could still fail. This was something nobody in our community had done before. They were still willing to put some money behind it. So I think for a 501c3, for a traditional nonprofit, I really feel like figuring out social enterprise, figuring out a way to move forward with your mission that's also financially sustainable. I think that's got to be a big piece of the future, because more and more we can't rely on some of that government funding.
Another question here: do you tie in some sort of case management service for your crew members that are in training? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, so this happened about 6 months after we started something that we called navigation. And navigation, probably the best way I can describe it is sort of it's person-centered life coaching. We called it navigation on purpose because the navigator isn't in charge of where the ship's going. So to me, the customer is the one who sets the course, and the navigator's there almost like the GPS in your car. So for instance, if I want to go somewhere, I tell the GPS where I want to go, and it tells me what turns to take for the fastest, least barriered way to get from where I am to where I said I wanted to go. And if I make a wrong turn along the way, it reroutes. It doesn't just abandon me, because I would never get anywhere if my GPS did that. It reroutes and helps me find the new fastest way from where I am to where I want to go. And if I change my mind, it'll do that too. So navigation, we named it very intentionally. We wanted to be able to do long-term relationship work with families below the poverty line, where we would stay with them through life planning and challenges, where we would work with the whole household, where if they made too much money, we wouldn't say you don't qualify anymore. And so we launched navigation back in 2016. And each one of our crew members and each trainee gets paired with one of our navigators. And the idea is for them to map out what is it that they like to do. So if you're working on one of our crews and you hate painting, we're not going to send you to the painting contractor that's partnered with us. You might be much more comfortable working with the carpet contractor, or you might decide after all of this that you'd like to go to our technical college for 2 years. And so we can work on trying to get you a scholarship for that and giving you some supports around getting ready for that. And maybe you can work part-time with us while you go do that. And so we try to be super flexible with being person-centered, because we feel like if the person, the customer, is driving the plan, then the plan is much more likely to succeed. And we have more than enough types of employers who are desperate for employees in our current market for us to be able to do that. And the navigator's job is to kind of dig into everything, not just that person who's there training, but if there's something going on with their kids that might be a barrier to them being a good employee, if there's something going on with their partner, with an aging parent who lives with them, we take on the whole household and act as a coach and a referral source and an ear during hard days, whatever it needs to be. But that navigation piece is key to us being able to succeed, because we don't want to just teach people how to read a ruler. We also want to teach them the life skills that they're going to need to be able to not need us anymore.
This is very interesting. Thank you for the presentation. Let's see here. This is phenomenal. Thank you. Central Missouri could be changed in a big way with this. Were you able to provide any supportive services to participants if you needed car repairs to come to work, for example?
The neat thing for us, maybe neat's the wrong word, is Lancaster County has a ton of different nonprofit agencies and services. The challenge that we've had in the past is it's almost like a machine where none of the gears touch. Everybody's working in these separate silos. And so we have a nonprofit that called Wheels to Work that helps people get cars. There's a nonprofit that helps people get bikes. There's nonprofits that help people get work clothes that are appropriate for their career choice. There's food programs. There's all this different stuff. But what we've done for decades is let people kind of bump around the system, almost like a pinball, and hopefully they hit all the things they're supposed to hit to get everything they need. And that's the other piece with navigation, is trying to bring that all together. So instead of telling the person who doesn't have transportation and maybe has limited phone minutes and everything else, that they're supposed to go all over the community and find all these things, one of the roles of the navigator is, once we've built the plan, is to bring together the resources, the different nonprofit or government programs that people qualify for, so that they can support what's happening in the plan. We're doing some work now with another initiative that we just started called We Can Do It, where we're working with single moms. We named it after the World War II initiative for women to do work that men had been doing before they went off to war. And in We Can Do It, we're working with a pilot cohort of 10 single moms, connecting them with the training that they need to get the jobs that will pay them a living wage, even if those jobs are traditionally seen as male-dominated jobs, welding or our technical colleges careers. And we've been able to do some really creative things with partners, like our Central Pennsylvania Food Bank is going to be providing groceries for those moms while they're in training, because they can't earn as much money while they're training. And our community foundation gave us money for something we called a life stipend. And the life stipend is to pay for school clothes for your kid, or rent for the month that you've got to drop out of work to go to training. Whatever it is that the barrier would have been, it's completely flexible money. And we've worked with other partners as well. So we did have someone who we were working with who not having a car was a barrier. So we got him connected with Wheels to Work so he could get a car. One of our crew people didn't have a driver's license. So his navigator worked with him to figure out how to navigate the DMV. It's a little bit of everything, but it's really been about how do we leverage what we already have as a community and make sure that what we're inventing as a community action agency are only the pieces that fill the gaps that nobody else has done yet. But we want to leverage wherever we can and partner wherever we can to bring those pieces together. And then we're very intentional about applying for grants together with those nonprofits so they get that money piece. We're very intentional about giving them credit for their partnership with us so that they get to share the outcome of those workers who do better. And power, when we do sit down and plan together about going after grants, it really is that kind of Arthurian round table where we all talk about, well, what do you need to be able to get this done? And what do you need? What do I need? Let's have a conversation as equals here so that they don't feel like our community action agency is trying to pull one over on them or drive the bus. We want the outcome, and the outcome takes real, transparent partnerships.
Are you available for further questions later after I speak to our leadership team?
Absolutely. I don't know if I have them. I'm going to check right now to see if I put my email on this. Sorry, wrong way. There we go. So my email is right there. I'm in our, I hope my contact information is also available through, we're a member of the National Community Action Partnership and our state association. But it's just my first initial last name at caplank.org. Happy to comment on that. We also, you'll see, and I might have even bugged some of you via email already, we're starting a training opportunity called Captivate in November, where we have an intensive 3-day training for community action and community development organizations on how to change your culture to take these kind of risks, how to build the types of collaboration, not just in nonprofits, but in local government and business sectors around you to do this kind of work, and how to change your culture to be one that's embracing innovation so that you can find those opportunities in the community, and then staying with those organizations for a year, at least a year, to provide technical support and build cohorts so that we can share our work with each other.
And Dan's right. If somehow you neglect to write this down or whatever, you can always ask me, and I have his contact information. Well, so either one of us can get you to him. And that's all the questions I've got here, Dan. So I want to thank you for the excellent presentation, and I look forward to I'm going to be doing a site visit here myself in a couple of weeks, so I look forward to seeing this all firsthand.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank everybody for attending today. And please don't feel any hesitation to reach out if you have any other questions.
And as I mentioned at the beginning, some of you may have joined us a little later. I will be sending out to everybody who had signed up ahead of time the recording from today's webinar, which does include the PowerPoint. It sometimes takes a day or two for that to show up in our system, but I will get that out to everybody, so you'll have also that to refer to. Thanks again. Hope to have some of you on our future webinars as well. Take care, everyone.
Thanks. Take care.